Humor is a weird thing, but it's extremely important for the sanity of mankind. What can cause a joke to be the one thing that makes life easier to deal with? I think that's up to the people who heard it. The best way to deal with the problems of society is to laugh at the insanity that is reality itself. Who knows, you might be laughing about me right now.
The world has become too absurd to be satirized. The great English writer G.K. Chesterton said that way back in 1911, long before math was considered racist and biological men were allowed to compete against women in sports.
You said that like nothing has changed since he was still alive. While it may be true that he ran out of material to make jokes about, he may have also been too scared to go into the extremely uncomfortable, insane, or dangerous topics of his time.
One can only imagine what he would say if he were alive today. At the Babylon Bee, where we write satire for a living, we're feeling Chesterton's pain in a big way.
That could mean that you are going about it the wrong way. Charlie Chaplin, Monty Python, and many of the other people who use absolute absurdity to their advantage can make perfect satirical stories about anything. Chaplin used his power to make a mockery of the Nazis. Monty Python treats quite a lot of things with irreverence and disrespect, taking on the entire entertainment industry at the time.
Just look at these headlines that were satirical at the time we wrote them. On May 9th, 2017, we ran this headline. 2 + 2 = 4, insists close-minded bigot. That was a joke, of course. But on August 10th, 2020, the Washington Examiner published this story. Math professor claims equation 2 + 2 = 4 reeks of white supremacist patriarchy. On August 13th, 2020, we ran this headline. BLM rioters awarded Nobel Peace Prize. At the time, we thought this was obvious satire, but on January 29th, 2021, this story was published in The Guardian. Black Lives Matter movement nominated for Nobel Peace Prize. On March 25th, 2020, we ran this headline. Pants sales plummet as everyone working from home. The very next day, this story appeared in Yahoo Finance. Amid coronavirus, Walmart says it's seeing increased sales of tops, but not bottoms. I could go on. Our satirical headlines are proving to be prophetic with astonishing regularity.
Are you even surprised by anything? This is just getting stupid.
So what does this mean for humor and satire? Well, for one thing, it makes our job much more difficult.
The Simpsons writers might have had the same problem, but Disney bought it. Their decline in quality is partly because of the lack of focus on the main plot of the episode, diverting the story into another problem, and dropping the things that started the process in the first place.
You might be surprised to hear that. The crazier reality is, the easier it is to make fun of, right? Actually, it's the opposite. Satire exaggerates the truth to make a point.
You're like the Onion articles, but you are still too afraid to go into absolute insanity, so you don't have enough ways to make enough material that could show a complete reality bending, or break reality itself to make sure your story doesn't end up predicting the future. Don't worry about what they think, go all out.
But when reality is this absurd and extreme views and behavior are commonplace, how do you go a step beyond it? Almost anything we publish now ends up being believable. And much of it ends up actually coming true.
There will always be something that will be considered weird, insane, or disgusting to society, and something will always be taboo. Step on some toes, and don't worry about your material being too off the wall.
As you've just seen, this is exactly what Chesterton was talking about. It's one of the ways the left is killing satire, by turning reality into a parody of itself.
Oh, come on, that is just a part of your neurotypical mentality. I can come up with some really crazy ideas for you to write about for years on end, but you won't even want to use anything that comes out of my mouth or the speakers hooked up to your computer.
There's another, more intentional and insidious way the left is killing satire, and that's through censorship.
Both sides would want censorship in some way or another.
We published an article a couple of years ago with this over-the-top headline. CNN purchases industrial-sized washing machine to spin news before publication. Believe it or not, Snopes fact-checked this story. I mean, come on, a washing machine to spin the news?
I'll give you credit for this one, that is funny in its own way.
That's an obvious joke, but Snopes fact-checked it and rated it false, as if we'd written a serious story. It used to be that jokes were either funny or not. They made you laugh, or they didn't.
Snopes has a way of checking the validity of the data, which is definitely flawed. They basically butcher the headline, and judge the facts of the story from the new headline they created. Not really a good idea, but they do that very thing.
But now, in the fact-checking age, we're giving them a truth rating. Jokes are no longer funny, they're false. And false information is dangerous. In response to the Snopes fact-check, Facebook warned us that we'd be demonetized and deplatformed if we continued publishing fake news.
Simply use other websites.
It should go without saying that there's a big difference between fake news, which is meant to deceive, and satire, which is meant to entertain and inform through mockery, humor, and irony.
From what I'm hearing, your humor is very tame. Let me try one for you, and you can use it for 50% of the revenue it earns. Government officials extend voter rights to domestic livestock.
But the left benefits by blurring this distinction. If they can successfully lump us in with fake news, then they can shut us down. It's that simple. These fact checks, which often smear us by suggesting we're purposefully misleading people, are nothing more than a creative, conniving way of justifying censorship.
As far as I can tell, every comedian has been talking about the things that happened to them and say what happened in a funny way. Even bold-faced lies have some truth in them. If they want to blur the line between reality and fantasy, there is still fiction somewhere to use.
But why would anyone want to censor satire? Why is Facebook paying USA Today to write lengthy refutations of our jokes? Yes, they actually do that.
It takes a lot of disrespect, irreverence, or hatred for anyone to satirize something, and everyone is familiar with the basic idea. They all want to be taken seriously, and by forcing them to look like complete fools, they will never get the respect they demand.
Because humor is ultimately a vehicle for truth delivery, and the truth can be offensive. Think about all the things you're not allowed to say anymore, not because they're false, but because they make people uncomfortable.
The existence of 4chan is abundant proof that some people certainly don't care about your little ego or your feelings. Let's just say that they have gone too far before. Countless times.
Satire cuts right through the pretense and political correctness to expose uncomfortable truths, and it does so more ruthlessly and effectively than anything else.
Fine, you get that one, keep going.
C.S. Lewis said, "Good philosophy must exist for no other reason, because bad philosophy needs to be answered." Satire is necessary for the same reason.
Have I been saying this on loop? Stick to your guns, go for the throat, and make sure you claw out the lower part of the chest. Show no mercy.
Satire ridicules bad ideas. And now, more than ever, bad ideas need to be exposed for what they are before they gain an even bigger foothold on our minds and hearts, especially on the minds and hearts of young people.
Which is definitely why you have to be more brazen with your material.
And while good philosophy and rational argumentation are indispensable, it's often humor that's most effective.
True, and this is also why darker themes are being explored more recently. They need to be exposed and explored to be understood by the people who see it.
To quote our friend G.K. Chesterton once more, humor can get in under the door, while seriousness is still fumbling at the handle. I'm Seth Dillon, CEO of the Babylon Bee for Prager University.
So, the main thing I can see in this guy is the feeling that he's a massive coward. He complained that satire is being censored by fact-checking and by the people who play the victim of anything, really. I've been trying to conquer the world via the internet itself, but as you can see, that's taking longer than expected.